Hey there, I'm Helper Wesley. I'm the creator of these games. On this YouTube channel, I release weekly devlogs where I talk about the things that I'm working on and all things game dev. If that sounds like something you'd like to listen to, then click that subscribe button. Alright, let's get into the video. This is going to be a double build where I talk about two different games that I'm working on. One I'm finishing up and putting away for good, and the other I'm fixing mistakes that shouldn't have been there in the first place. Starting with the first one, which is Asteroid Dig. The game has gone through a number of updates, and this is going to be its last one. I really wanted to get this one done before New Year's, because I didn't want this little half an hour to an hour long game experience to have this legacy of taking over a year to build. That's a bit much. So this final update for the game has to do with languages. If you watch my other videos, I've talked about this before. I've had some very wonderful people in my Discord help me out with the language translations. But before I approached them, just to minimize the amount of work that they would have to do, I first grabbed all of the words from my game, excluding some that I forgot to take out because I'm distractible, and ran those through Google Translate to get words that would approximately be the same word in their language as in English. And then brought that list to them so they could go through it and change it to the right words. I know that Google Translate can't be entirely reliable because I can speak a little bit of French, and with my little bit of limited experience, I know for a fact that things don't translate perfectly over. It's usually the fault of expressions. Sometimes the word just doesn't exist in that language, but it's usually the fault of expressions. So for example, in English, the word excited, I can very confidently say that I'm excited to meet you. I'm excited to do something new. In most romantic languages, French, Spanish, Portuguese, excited means horny. No joke, it means horny. So to say that you're excited to meet somebody, it's not cool, okay? So to avoid those things, I got the help of people to help me translate the words into their language in a way that makes sense. I started off adding the languages into the game by manually adding in events that would modify the words based on the language that was selected. And I was halfway through that, and I realized that that would include having to make the event realign the text, resize the font based on the length of the word, and all of these sorts of things, and I got overwhelmed by that. So instead of doing the sensible thing and doing that, or following a tutorial, which I should have done, I instead just made a different scene for every different version of that language. And this way I could realign the text myself, rather than trying to do it with events, and that way I was confident that it looked okay. But of course, as I said, I didn't actually Google Translate everything at the beginning, so I ran into a lot of phrases that I hadn't translated over, which means, God, I hope it worked. And because this work was so tedious, it took me forever to get this language update in. I think I might have asked these people for the help with the translations like maybe 2 months ago, and I'm only doing it now. I was about to go to bed when suddenly, the game dev groove hit me. And anybody out there who makes games probably knows what this feels like. When you just get into that flow state where everything works out great and you just seem to have endless energy to get these things done. So of course at 2 a.m., instead of going to bed, I just kept working. And thankfully this means that the language translations finally got done. So you can't play this just yet. It's still going to go through the Google review process like always, and they're slowed down right now because of the global pandemic. But once it's reviewed and out again, hopefully doing this will mean that more people will be able to approach my game, and hopefully that will translate into more sales. We'll see. If it doesn't, then the heck with translating my games in the future. Alright, now that I can leave that game in the past and never talk about it again, the other game I was working on this week was Galaxy Bash. After some lovely people gave me some feedback, I did what I always do, which is write it down. And then with that feedback, I went back through the game and fixed all of these things that really shouldn't have been in there in the first place, but they're the sort of things that happen when you try to finish an entire game in 7 days, in order to get a nice clickbait title for your YouTube videos. So let's go through what was fixed with the game, and what I'm going to do with it now. Starting with probably the most important thing, which was adding save to the level select screen. So the base game had it so that when you went back to the main menu to press quit and you exit the game, that scene was when it saved. The problem being, on phones, people can exit the game anywhere they want to. They don't need to wait to go back to the main menu to exit the game. So many people were just exiting the game whenever they, wanted to stop playing the game, which meant they never got back to the main menu, which meant they never saved, which is awkward. Like, really awkward. As somebody who doesn't actually have a touchscreen mobile phone, which I know is weird, but as somebody who doesn't have that, I never experienced that before, so I never planned for it, which means I needed to fix that. And thankfully, this was just a matter of copying the set of events that made you save in the main menu and put them into the level select. Because once you finish 10 levels in the game, it automatically sends you back to the level select. So when you're there, it saves again, which means everything's good. The next thing I wanted to deal with was how ads show up. Since this is how I'm going to make money, which, I haven't made much yet, but since this is how I intend to make money, I didn't want that to look terrible. So what was happening before was when you clicked exit out of the ad, you still had to sit there until 15 seconds was up and then it automatically went back to the main game. What I did instead was added a second event so that if the ad is loaded and you click either the ad itself or the exit button to exit the ad, it would send you back to the level select. Or you could still sit there for the 15 seconds and then it would send you back to the level select. And this way you don't have that awkward counting after the ad is already finished, because that was just really weird. And again, because I don't have a phone myself, I didn't expect that to happen. But now that's fixed, and thankfully it looks a lot better in my opinion. Hopefully that will make the game look a little more sleek and streamlined. The next thing was colors not showing up in the level select. So when you selected the color of the stars that you wanted to use in game, in the level select they're supposed to show up as that color. From level 1 to 10 it worked, but from there on it didn't. And the thing is, I knew why this was, because I made the first 10 levels, and then I didn't think to add that event on for the rest of them. Which means I had to go back through a whole bunch of tedious work and just copy and paste and edit numbers, and you're seeing it on screen now, and it's really boring to look at, and imagine how it was to do. And this is going to be a common thing for, I think, probably all of my games, unfortunately. With better planning, I would have been able to avoid this, but since I didn't, I don't get to avoid this. I'm stuck sitting through this. But that problem was just cosmetic. This next one is really stupid. Like, I don't know how I didn't see this one while I was playing. I don't understand. When you're in the level select, there was no back button. There was no option to leave that screen and go back to the main menu. Anyhow, that was literally a line or two of code and done. I put the same animation on there that I have in-game for the back buttons, and then I moved on. So a big problem that people had with the game from the get-go was that it was just way too difficult. When I was playtesting and adjusting the difficulty of the timer, I was using a keyboard and not a touchscreen, so I didn't have to account for every time my finger left the screen, which means when I tried to play it later using just the touchscreen, oh boy. I was lucky to get 4 stars, let alone 5. And on top of that, because I had used position instead of lerp, it meant that when you swipe your finger across, there's a pixel that's following your finger. And the pixel is not following, but it's at the position of your finger. So if you swiped really quickly, it would go from where your finger is to where your finger is now, and it might jump right over the control, which means it wouldn't trigger the control, which I only saw later on again, and I think that might have to do with slower phones, but either way, it's a silly thing to happen. So I tried using a lerp instead. So basically the pixel is now, when you swipe really quickly, it's moving faster to get to your finger, so it's not at the position of your finger, but it's following your finger. So now when you swipe, it has to go across the control in order to get to your finger. So here I go again, dealing with the fact that I didn't plan ahead. Because I'm not using something called external events, it means that I have to go through every single level and add that control change into every single one. Which means on goes the music, on goes my headphones, and I have to just power through it. While I was doing that, I also decreased the settings for all of the timers as I was going through every level to change the controls. They're all still difficult, but manageable. And so for a final thing with this set of work, I put a little notice on the bottom of the main menu screen that says up to this many levels, and that way you can kind of tell what version of the game you're playing. Now this version of the game will not be available anytime soon. This week I wanted to get through more work than I got done, but I ultimately decided it was more important for me to spend quality time with my family over the holidays than it was to work on this. But next week, I will be adding 30 levels to Galaxy Bash and then going back to Subway Hell. So yeah, that's what I got done this week. If these sorts of devlogs interest you, then maybe click that subscribe button. And if you'd like to talk to me personally, the link to our Discord, the Game Dev Fireside, is down below. And if you decide to click on that link, then I'll see you there.